I was wrong about this video. Now, yes, I think Super Rugby does need to be fixed. However, I think I jumped the gun a little bit. And today what I'm going to run you through is how we can actually fix Super Rugby without going overboard like I did in that video. In that video, I said things like, so in my head, I thought we need to find a way to reward the winners and punish the losers. When I first came up with this idea, I said, you know what, let's do a 2-division system. 2 divisions, we have 10 teams in each division, and we push for promotion relegation between the divisions. And this 2-division system I was sold on it until Hughesy gave me an idea. If you don't know Hughesy, he's my podcast co-host. And he said, I actually like the things of keeping them separate and keeping them separate divisions, all play together, but you have an Australian champ and a New Zealand champ. And I sat there and I said, I like that idea. Let me go and look at it. So I came up with this. But I actually think there's an easier way to make the product better and make Super Rugby Pacific more attractive. So to start off, what I'm going to do is I'm going to split the competition in half and have 2 conferences. As we talk about all the time on our podcast, we've gone down this route that this is a franchise-based business. This isn't clubs, this isn't like the EPL, this is Americanized, and this is the way the power holders have decided, the power brokers should I say, and this is the way we are going. So we've split it into 2 conferences, 2 conferences of 6 teams, 5 Australian teams in the Drua, 5 New Zealand teams, and Moana Pacifica. The fixtures will look like this. You'll play everyone in your conference home and away. You will then play 4 games against the other conference. One of those games I'm turning into a rivalry round, 1's super round, and 2 more, 1 home, 1 away. The rivalry round, I'm doing this because purely I think a season without the Drua playing Moana Pacifica is just outrageous. So for this rivalry round, I've set up some rivalries I think can stand the test of time. First one is the 2 most successful clubs in Super Rugby from each conference, the Crusaders and the Brumbies. We then have Sydney against Auckland, the 2 biggest cities, with the Tars versus the Blues. Melbourne against Wellington, with the Rebels against the Hurricanes. The Chiefs and the Reds have already started something, so keep that going. And finally, as you know, the Phoenix and the Perth Glory use in the A-League, let's go one for distance with the Highlanders from the Deep South facing the Western Australians in the Western Force. So every single year, that game will happen, plus 3 more, giving us 14 games in total for the regular season. If we now move into the finals and how we've set that up, I think 8 teams is too many when we're looking at a 12-team tournament. I like the idea of 4, but I've settled with 6. And the way I've done it is the top 6 teams, no matter what conference, go straight through to the finals. I'm not trying to confuse anyone. You could do it the easy way as well and go the top 3 from each conference, but anyone, top 6 teams with the highest points total go through. What we then see is a 6-team final series where we have 3 play 6, 4 play 5. 1 and 2 get a bye in that first round. Then in the second round, it'll be the winner of that 3 versus 6 and 4 versus 5. 1 and 2 will play off. The winner of 1 and 2 goes straight to the grand final. The winner of the 3 and 4 game, let's say if those 2 teams win, will then play the loser of 1 and 2, and then that team will go through to the final. I have a bracket up explaining it all because in my head, when saying it, it sounds confusing, but really quite simple to follow. Because we've done the top 6 teams, this could come from any conference, but it's going to be highly unlikely that it'll come from 5, or definitely impossible for it to come from 6 teams from the same conference, or even 5 teams, with every team playing home and away in that conference. So therefore, we are going to get some Aussie teams and New Zealand teams in the finals. It may not just be 3 and 3. We may see some 4s and 2s, depending on results and how they go. In a perfect world, I'd love to be able to say that I'll host the final at a neutral venue, but I think for now, it's highest on the scoreboard gets the right to host finals and so on. When we're talking about who qualifies first or second, it'll be based purely on points, so bonus points will matter. So let's say the Brumbies finish first in the Aussie Conference on 19 points, and the Hurricanes finish first, my Hurricanes finish first, on 20 points, they will qualify as the top qualifier. The second part of this then comes when we add in the Asian Champions Cup, based pretty much off the European Champions Cup, where we have the Japanese League One and Super Rugby Pacific merged to make this competition. To do this, I've taken the top 6 teams from each comp to make a 12-team tournament with 2 pools of 6, so with 3 of the teams being Japanese League One and 3 being Super Rugby Pacific, and vice versa in the other pool. The teams in these pools will then play each other once, so you'll play 5 games, and the first and second from each pool will make it through to the semi-finals, where we'll get a crossover. 1 will play 2, and 1 will play 2, and then finally a champion. This would require 7 weeks, and the way I would do this is these games would be played midweek, every second week during the Super Rugby season. I know there was 16 weeks last week for the Japanese League One, so they may have to start 2 weeks earlier. But the ideal competition with this would run on a Wednesday every second week and run all the way through until the end of the Super Rugby season and the Japanese League One. So the ideal world for me would see Japan League One final and Super Rugby final happen on the same weekend, and then the weekend after is the Asian Champions Cup final. A really perfect way to wrap up the season. And also, because it's the top 6 teams, especially from Super Rugby Pacific point, and they're having to play those midweek games, it gives an advantage to those bottom 6 teams from the Super Rugby Pacific to really push those top 6 in the actual competition, because they're not having to play midweek games. They're not having to decide, do we need to rest players? Can they follow up a Wednesday and a Saturday game? And everything like that. I totally understand player safety and everything like that, so I don't know if there needs to be a rule implemented to stop so many games happening, but what I'm trying to do is get the most out of a season as possible and keep the season as short as possible. From here, I think we get our ideas that have been tossed around for a while now: Super Rugby draft, trades, free agency. I actually believe with this you could open up the Super Rugby Pacific tournament, so you could play for any team in Super Rugby Pacific, still represent Australia or New Zealand. I also think this could opportunity to open up Japan and say, look, if you play for in a team in Japan, you can also play for New Zealand or Australia, because although we're separate competitions, we end up making that one that, you know, we are synchronized with that, and it could work really well as a calendar thing for training camps and so on. This then allows the draft and trades and free agency. As I've said, we're going down the American route, so we really need to build up on those. I reckon I can see the draft with some tournament, under 20s tournament being created. Doesn't have to be representative of the teams we currently have. So like the Hurricanes don't need an under 20 squad. It'll be a new squad, something like that, where kids put their names into the hat to play for these teams. They get selected, and from there they go into a draft prospect, draft situation, draft system. Very similar to something like the G League Ignite over in America with their rookies. Instead of having to go to college, we could do something like that with the S League Ignite. Just an idea though with the draft and how that could work, so we're not stealing players within encatchments of the professional leagues. So yes, I admit I was probably wrong and jumped the gun with trying to expand and grow Super Rugby too much and fix the NPC and everything. Video coming on that later. I also have a video coming on fixing kind of the rugby calendar and how I would make those changes, which will add a bit more to this and understanding of how this would work, looking into the calendar. But as always with these videos, if you have any different ideas, if you think I'm wrong, if you think we need to do anything else, if Super Rugby should just split up and we should go back to club rugby, please let me know in the comment section. And make sure you hit the subscribe button and like. For now, I've been Luke from the Sports Booth. We will see you later.